When you're in a state of twilight sleep and you're not quite awake and not quite asleep, that seems to be the state in which the hag attacks. You're weak, you're slow, you're foggy. Why wouldn't it come when I'm awake or when I'm feeling in control of my body and my mind? I left home very young because my parents, my mother couldn't handle me, and I spent like 4 years in and out of the CAS, and I ran away a lot. I lived on the street, and I was a tough kid, but it was my own decisions that put me there, so I learned the hard way.
I'm Lawrence Chow. Today on Ghostly Encounters, we meet Kat, a woman who knows all too well the European folklore that spawned the term hag-ridden. Folklore describing witches that climb onto sleeping humans to terrify and sometimes to kill. Kat's trouble started when she was young. She came from a dysfunctional family, had a baby at 18, and spiraled into an obsession that nearly took her life.
I first started having anorexic symptoms when I was about 14 years old, and it progressed slowly over time. I was at a point where I was so malnourished that my hair was falling out. My nails were falling off. I had lost control of a lot of bodily functions, and if you had asked me, "What's your name?" it would take me like 5 minutes to answer you because I was just so starved. I was so gone. I was not a human anymore. I was a shell of a person. And my heart was weak, my kidneys were failing, and I could barely walk around without falling over, wheezing from the effort that it took. That was when I was at my lowest, and that was when I started experiencing the hag. Old hag tends to come when people are weak or sick. And at the time I hadn't eaten in months, and I was starting to get close to death. And that's when it started, so I just figure that my illness was kind of like an opening for this to happen to me. The first time it happened, I was sleeping and woke up because I felt a hand on my leg, and I realized that I couldn't move. And I remember looking down at my leg and feeling a hand and not seeing it, and I kind of panicked, but I couldn't even yell or scream because my vocal cords were paralyzed, and then I just drifted back to sleep. It was so fleeting and so strange that I never expected to ever experience something like that again. So then when I did, it was pretty shocking. I brought it to the attention of my doctor at first because I thought something's wrong with me physically, or maybe I'm going crazy. And he said that I had sleep paralysis and that it's a sleep disorder. And then I guess for a long time I just figured whatever this is, it's a sleep disorder. I didn't really think there was anything supernatural happening. It was just a really scary thing where I'd wake up, not be able to move, and I'd hallucinate. I'd have auditory and visual hallucinations. But then something happened that made me think maybe this isn't just a sleep disorder. I got married to my daughter's father, but him and I split up, and she and I had to live, what's the nice word for it? We had to live in a hellhole with bugs and crackheads and guns and drugs, and I was on welfare, and I had nothing. I just had her and me, and trying to recover from the eating disorder and this thing attacking me in my sleep, and I just was at my very lowest at that point. So I gave my daughter to my mother, and I asked her to take care of her so I could go to school. My daughter definitely saved my life, because I was barely wanting to eat when I got pregnant, and then I had another reason to eat. She was another person that I was responsible for, and so I ate for her, not for myself. And she really pulled me out of something that I think would have killed me a long time ago if it wasn't for her. But it's a battle I still fight every day.
In folklore, hags often prey on the weak and the sick. A single visit from a hag rarely kills, but if the hag comes back night after night, that may be a different story. Our historical consultant, Dina Bain-Taylor, tells of a study done in Newfoundland in which a previously healthy man was hagged for more than a month and nearly died. Kat only saw the hag sporadically at first, but those visits quickly became more frequent and more threatening.
It just became this regular kind of, I would wake up, I can't move, and I would see somebody standing out of the corner of my eye, like a black shape, like somebody's leg and hip, and I felt like if I could just move my head over a little bit, I could see who it is. And by the time I can move my head, it's gone and over. So, but I have this feeling like this weight, like I'm being held down. It feels like so malevolent, so scary. When you're in a state of twilight sleep and you're not quite awake and not quite asleep, that seems to be the state in which the hag attacks. You're weak, you're slow, you're foggy. In my heart, it didn't settle with the idea that this was simply sleep paralysis and that's the end of it. There just always felt like there was something more happening. I know that the human mind is powerful and that we can have some pretty strong experiences because of our brains, but this was just beyond anything I think my brain could cook up, so. When I did my research and found out that people all over the world are experiencing this and have the same hallucination, instead of finding comfort in that, I was just unnerved. Because before I found that out, I could write it off. But once I saw that that was occurring, that people everywhere were seeing the same woman or having the same experience, it kind of just, it made me question my, like science and logic. This dates back like hundreds of years, and I mean, they have old depictions of it, paintings of like weird demons and things sitting on sleeping women. It suggests that there's more at work than a mere like sleep disorder. And it wasn't until my roommate had gone through it that I really realized that it was something. She moved in with me in September, and I told her about it then, and she kind of shrugged it off and just said whatever. And then about 3 weeks after she moved in, one night I had the hag experience, and I got up and went to the bathroom, washed my face off, and went back to bed because I had a class in the morning, and I was so used to it at this point that it was just like, I just need to stand up, get it off, and go back to bed. And then after I got back in bed, like 10 minutes later, she came tearing into my bedroom, screaming and crying about an old woman sitting on her chest. And I just said, well, I told you. And she got in bed with me and she cried for hours. And every night for about 2 weeks after that, she slept in my bed with me. She was too scared to go to her own room. As the years have passed, it's become every other day, every day. It was just pure evil, like pure malevolence. I woke up and I heard running in my kitchen. My daughter came in the room and she said, "Mommy, I'm so scared. There's somebody in the kitchen. Can I sleep with you?" And I kind of just grunted, because I couldn't really move. I snapped out of the paralysis and she wasn't there. She wasn't even at my house at the time. She was staying with my mom. I felt so terrified because this was my child being presented to me and she was talking to me. And I felt really violated, like this is a family member, but it's not even them. It's something that looks like them, sounds like them, but it's not them. It was a really horrible feeling. It was just like, it was just pure evil, like pure malevolence. I'd like to believe that it were psychological. And even if it were, I'd still hate it, and it would still horrify me. And as much as I like that idea, I can't swallow it. I have to believe that there's something paranormal at work as well. Perhaps it's a mixture of both. Maybe you need to have the sleep paralysis in order for something like the hag to come. Maybe she doesn't cause the paralysis. Maybe that is medical. Whatever it is, though, it scares me, and there's seems to be no end, and I just want it over.
Cat's torn. If the hag is supernatural, well, that's almost too frightening to contemplate. But if it isn't, if it's in your head, that may be even worse. Wherever it comes from, Kat's belief that it is some kind of evil ghost allows her to throw herself into the task of defeating it. That may be easier than ridding herself of her inner demons, and it makes good use of the tenacity and sense of responsibility she's used to survive.
It was very sporadic, maybe once every month, maybe once every 2 months. But as the years have passed, it's become every other day, every day. I've tried sleeping aids, I've tried prescription sleeping aids, even my doctor gave me, but I find that all that does is it makes it harder for me to pull myself up and out of it when it happens. I stay awake. It's the only thing that I can do. I eat coffee, I drink pot after pot of tea. When I do sleep, I sleep with my lights on. I sleep with the television, my dog, my cat, anything I can get just to keep me calm, just to keep me safe. I have a cordless phone, I keep it right beside me because at night, if it gets really bad and I have a really bad one, I will call my friends and say, come over and stay here because I can't be alone. Because I live alone. I vacuum at like 4 o'clock in the morning and dust and have the cleanest apartment in Mississauga because I'm always up doing something just to keep myself busy. The anticipation of waiting for nightmares and hags is almost worse than the hag itself because you're on this weird edge. You're just uptight for hours. And on the nights that nothing happens, then no hag comes and no nightmares come, I'm half awake waiting that whole night, just waiting. And afraid to get sleep, because if I get sleep and then I remember how glorious sleep can be, then when it comes again, I'm going to be even more depressed that I'm not sleeping. I'm just terrified. Three nights ago, I had the worst old hag experience I've ever had in my life. I woke up and I heard the sound in my kitchen again, but this time it was the sound of my utensil drawer opening. And I saw a shadow in the hall, and it moved kind of a bit, and then I heard it speak. It just spewed these profanities at me, and I was shocked. It felt like somebody was pushing my head down into the pillow, and I couldn't breathe, and it took me it took a lot to fight and get myself moving again so that I could lift my head, and that really scared me. Anorexia is a devastating disease that completely eats your mind away. And that's, I guess, where it might be a little bit similar to the hag experience, because the hag experience does eat your mind because you're not sleeping. And sleep deprivation can make you feel really confused and slow and stupid, a lot like starving. I try to stay busy now by writing and walking. I walk every day. Every night, as soon as it gets dark, I put on my coat and I'm gone for like 2 hours. Just wander the neighborhoods, thinking. I cannot imagine what life would be like without the hag. What 8 hours of sleep would feel like. I can't imagine what going to sleep and being comfortable in my bed and not terrified would be like. To feel the pillows and the blankets and the warmth and feel safe. I'm stronger than the hag. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind. My daughter gives me the strength to keep going and survive. I just feel like I have to be good for her, just for her.
When Kat was interviewed for this show 4 months ago, her courage touched many of our crew members. One of them had an idea, and one thing led to another. And 6 weeks ago, Kat went for help. Last week, she came back into our studio to talk about that.
The night before I went for the intervention, there was a lot of hell. It was the worst night of my life. I had hags constantly, like every 2 minutes. I had probably like 50. And the person who was staying with me, who was taking me to the intervention the next day, he felt things touching him, pulling on his hair. And I felt things touching me and pulling on my hair. And my pets were going crazy, running around the apartment, barking and meowing, and just, they wouldn't settle down. And I had visions and I was seeing things, and just, it was like the entity knew it had to leave, and it was using every last bit of energy it had left to try to scare me out of going to get help. So it was using its full force against me. It doesn't make sense with the amount of resistance I had the night before and the amount of change that happened to me over the period of an hour the day of. There's absolutely no way that it was psychological. I have to look at it and be honest and say it was 100% spiritual.
Despite the terror of that night, Kat was undaunted. The next day, she got in the car and traveled 3 hours from home, chasing the hope that she could finally rid herself of the hag. She underwent a North American shamanic intervention. It was a process steeped in ritual, and as you can see, it was the ammunition Kat needed to fight the hag.
It felt like morphine or something, some kind of like overpowering drug. I just felt my like I had vertigo and I felt this pain and I just like felt like screaming, and they said just scream and let it out because that's part of it. And I remember saying, I feel like you're pulling things out of me, and they said that's because we are. And I cried a lot, and then it was only about 3 minutes of that, and then all of a sudden this warmth came into me, this beautiful warmth, and I felt so calm and peaceful. I feel like so good sleeping. It's just amazing. Sleep is so, I can't explain it. It's just been the most beautiful experience for me. Going to bed at night with a smile on my face as opposed to clutching my blankets in fear is made the biggest difference. It has made a huge difference in my life, and I just feel like a brand new person.